So well done for that. Continue to have such a mentality because the market is ruthless. It doesn't matter if you're a youth. If your drink is not nice, your drink is not nice, period. So we need to make sure that at least that you educate your youth that it is the product which is going to go into the market. But another dynamic that we've heard every single provincial minister speak about since morning has been the role that local authorities should be playing. And we brought one local authority here, Mbire RDC, Rural District Council, and with Mr. Wiseman Kadungure. Mr. Wiseman Kadungure, give us in a short brief. As an RDC, what have you done so far to promote rural industrialization in terms of building capacity in food processing enterprises? Because people are just associating RDCs with liquor licenses. What have you done so far in terms of rural industrialization?
Thank you, moderator. As local authority, normally when we talk of local authority, we are talking of space, where industry has to occupy, where everything has to take place. But when it comes to land now, the land is limited, is highly contested. But as local authority, we normally try to help our people from rural areas because we have areas that they can develop that is designated, which is also a challenge. With the growth point, with the rural service center, and we also have the business centers, of which the growth point is the only one that they can have security of tenure, where they can have title deeds and everything that can give them a right to acquire or to borrow some funds for everything that they want. But in order to break that also, we have seen, if you go through our RDC Act, the Communal Lands Act, to be specific, Section 8, where it talks about user and occupational rights, whereby people in the communal lands, they are only allowed to occupy and use that piece of land, which is a limiting factor for them to grow into industrialization. But we had to move on to Section 10, where in the Communal Lands Act, where the local authority can then apply to the ministry for that certain piece of land to be set aside for certain industrial activities. So that is what we were doing in order to close that gap. And also there is an issue of policies now, because you can have the land and you have the people. If the policy is not speaking to each other, definitely you have a challenge. So what we did is to work on the policies that when people come to our offices, there is a limited number, because every developer doesn't want to stay much in the office. They want to acquire papers and go straight to the piece of land and do what they are supposed to do. So what we have said, according to the SI, ease of doing business that was issued in 2017, that within 5 days, every local authority must respond to every application that has been forwarded to that local authority. And apart, over and above, even if all the papers to do with the development permit and everything must be processed within a possible time. And also development conditions must also be accommodative that can allow investors to continue to have that piece of land. What am I saying? I'm saying every developer, even if from the rural areas, if he wants to access piece of land, he must do it within 30 days. He must be able to access each and every piece of land. But however, there is certain areas that we think there is a gap that needs also to be addressed. Starting with the people that we want to give the service, right? We are talking about the people in the communal areas. They have got the mentality that when they talk of industrialization, they think of urban areas. So there's need also to be there's need capacity building for them to be reoriented, so that whatever comes to them, they embrace it and also able to implement within the possible time. So what we did as local authority also, we have noted that there are certain areas that needs to be explored, but local authority, sometimes you cannot have all the requisite skill, the skill gap that has been said. We have now engaged at the university, enter into MOU, they come and do researches, and they give us the possible solutions on how to explore and come up with a viable, resilient, and sustainable rural industrialization. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mbire RDC. And of course, in 1997, 1998, we had one of our own first Zimbabweans who actually went and ventured into rural industrialization, Mr. Bezo Nyabadza, who just gave a presentation earlier, built Ripley's. We all know in Manicaland and Mashonaland West, Ripley's was the first to actually come up with groundnuts processing plants. May you kindly share, I'm sure there's a microphone there, Mr. Nyabadza, share with us your experience thus far. What has been the success behind Ripley's, and what are some of those areas that you believe that as government we need to be able to enlighten, and obviously financial services? You are dealing obviously with various communities. You've now ventured into 4 crops. Please tell us just a bit about your experience from 1997 to date.
Thank you very much, organizer. In 1997-98, almost 30 years ago, nearly, we built 2 factories, one in Mashonaland West and one in Manicaland, in rural setups.
Bring it closer.
Yeah. What we then realized was that once you do that, there is active participation from the community, because they grow the crop and they sell back the crop to you. That's a plus, which then enhances income generation at village level. Not only that, you see growers now expanding their hectarage because they've got a ready market. They grow, and our system is that we are also a registered seed house. So we outlay seed, then we follow our seed and buy back the produce. But more importantly, you find that the cost structure is certainly much friendly, because the villagers work at the factory. They are not going to pay housing bills of electricity and water. They come, you provide transport, of course, and food. So those are some of the immediate gains which take place when you go to a rural setup and you retain mother, son, and daughter. They all work for you, and there's a degree of loyalty to the company. Those are some of the issues which we experienced. But I must add, this is related to access finance. Those days, some of you will recall, UDC was alive. You would walk in UDC offices on a Thursday. By next Tuesday, you had access to money if you had a sound program. That's not the case today. And that's a minus as we speak now. Where government can come on board, I honestly believe there are 2 sectors here if we are to make success of the rural industrialization. One is the public sector and one is the private sector. Private sector is a key partner in this exercise, but there has to be an enabling environment, consistency on policy, and equity participation. When you finance, let's have institutions of finance taking up equity in those entities for 30 months, for 40 months, but when they take equity, they graduate the entrepreneur on personnel, on finance, on financial governance, which is important if we are going to be successful. Those were some of our personal experiences. We used to employ in our heydays 1,000 permanent employees in a village environment. I think that's a plus. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nyabadza. That's quite well noted experiences that you've had. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to open it up to the floor, but before we open up to the floor, I'm going to ask the technical guys to give Reverend Damasani the microphone, our Deputy Chief Secretary in the Office of the President Cabinet, and he oversees all the social services. A number of issues are coming out, and normally in Zimbabwe, when we talk about anything that the government is doing, we are always thinking that everyone should be a boss. But you rightfully heard it that there's an element of employment creation, which also Zimbabwe Youth Council, you need to ride on. To say in most of these communities where industries are going to be made or established, then the youth there are also going to be employed. Then we have entities like Industrial Development Corporation of Zimbabwe, and the biggest question is, have they done a lot? We see in South Africa IDC taking up equity in some of the startups in rural industries and stuff like that. And financial challenges that we have in Zimbabwe, is it a challenge or an opportunity? But overall, Reverend Damasani coordinates all the social ministries. He knows the level of poverty that is within our rural industries and the marginalization that is there. Sorry, Chef, I'm putting you on a tight point, but the Bible says, you being a reverend, you know that there's wisdom in the multitude of counsel. So now that we're in the multitude of your wise counsel, perhaps just give us a few words, Deputy Chief Secretary.
Thank you very much for getting me off guard. I was going to present in the next session. But what I've gleaned from all the presentations is that within, especially this sector, which is closer to the rural community, it is the food sector. I think that it is not new to actually let them manufacture, because this is what they've always been doing. They've been growing their own food, growing their own protein, etc. But we just need to retool. And retooling is not a very cheap thing. But after that, rather besides retooling, the other thing that is important is then to innovate out of the ordinary. And that is where people have got to come in. What Baba Nyabatsa has just brought out is something that we need to replicate and go back to our own areas. I come from rural Cholocho, and in that place, we know very well that it's a dry area. And therefore, you cannot expect industrialization there of something that is of a wet product. So you need to innovate now and turn them into manufacturers of the things that they actually do, which, for example, is goats. And if they do goats, they can multiply it. They can even do it better because goats survive there with very little foliage. And therefore, national foods or other food companies can then say, okay, how can we improve the goat feed so that they don't have to depend on izinga ezkhonapana ekhaya. And therefore, you are now getting a more qualitative production of goat. So what our rural folk need is an industrialization that is within their knowledge. In other words, you don't want to go to them like they're tabula rasa, where there's nothing that they know. But let's build on what they know, get it into a motorization, and then get it into something that they can get money for. Many people in town will need a goat almost every weekend. This is a trade fair time, and this is the only time maybe that Bulawayo just lights up. And all of these restaurants will need goat meat, they will need guinea fowl meat, they will need roadrunner meat. And yet, out there in Cholocho, these things are in abundance, just flowing all over the place. And we just need to harness them and tell them, you can do it. It takes time, it takes a bit of patience. So what we need to do, first as private sector, is to know that these people can be changed and can be changed from what they have always been knowing. Secondly, as government, is that these people can be invested in terms of our time. I think the ministries of skills development and the ministries of in charge of SMEs then have to tailor-make programs and training sessions that will change the thinking of the rural folk. We don't need to change them and make them into town. Industrialization is not necessarily urbanization. Industrialization is getting that which you normally use a stone to produce, you then use a machine to produce. You will have crushed your peanut butter using a stone. But now we are saying, get a machine to do it so that you can do more bottles than just those that you are doing for your immediate family. And in that process, as you train them to think differently, then you need to infuse the understanding of money. I think our major problem is that we do not understand money. And because we don't understand money, we don't know how to make it, and we don't know how to use it. So I just pose to the two ministries, skills and the women affairs, as well as to the private sector in our midst. Please, let's just invest time, money, as well as the change of people's thinking to get industrialized in the rural areas. Thank you.
Thank you. A round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. It's always good to tap into the wisdom. And obviously, he did mention a lot to do with the element of our approach, that don't take as if everyone in Nigeria, they say the good word for a shallow person is a mumu. So they're saying don't go to provinces taking as if everyone is a mumu. There's something they know. And obviously you all know that we grew up eating traditional grains and everything else. And they had some form of mechanization. The idea is how then do we retool, how then do we capacitate them. I'm going to, Director of Ceremonies, just allow me for this time so that I can take advantage of people who are here. I'm going to ambush the chairman of ZITF because I know he also sits in as an executive running a food processing company. Can we give Mr. Bosisa, then I'm going to come back to the chairman of the Parliamentary Committee on Industry and Commerce, just to give us a guidance in terms of how their company has been approaching, what has been his experience. This might be the third or fourth time he's running ZITF, and we're always coming here and talking, are we making progress?
Thank you, Deputy Chief Director, for the opportunity, and thank you to our wonderful panelists for such passionate presentations about how we truly change the narrative, and Reverend Damasane has just underscored. I think we need to do things differently. I agree with Mkoma Bezel that we need new proverbs. The first paradigm shift is to think of people in rural areas as business people. As micro businesses, as opposed to just, in the derogatory term, we know the names that were used for people in rural areas. But we understand what it is. And people in the rural areas have an understanding of economy and economics. But we just need to see them differently as business people, as micro businesses. I think the next thing, after seeing them as micro businesses, we need in those communities aggregators of some of the things they do. And I've seen this model in Malawi. It works very well. Where you aggregate, whether it's chickens, it's munga, it's millet, you have aggregators who are structured, empowered. Financial institutions actually finance aggregators. And an aggregator is somebody in the community who's well-known, respected, with integrity, because it involves loans and money. And that person then goes into the community and aggregates your millet. That aggregator is linked to a National Foods who do multi-grain. When we grow up, we all want to be National Foods. Who's linked to large companies which are linked to markets and export markets. So let's choose the path of least resistance. Skills and educating, as Reverend has said, those come when you are now, expanding, creating scale, good agronomics, and so on and so on. But once you have a design, it starts with a design. You design a system whether it's soya. In Malawi grows 300 tons of soybeans every year. It is not grown by commercial farmers. I was there in Lilongwe. It is grown by Okoko, Wanambuya. They come there with those Scania bringing 1 ton, half a ton to an aggregator. I stood at an aggregator. I saw this happening. They walk away with a receipt that they can take to the bank and in cash, get 80% cash for it. So this is some of the designs that we need to truly transform the activities in rural areas. It takes intentionality, but also it takes models. So let's pick a province, let's pick a model, and let's get going. Let's pick a crop, let's pick millet, and get going. And then look for scale, look for expansion. And as manufacturers or large-scale manufacturers, I'm sure my colleague from National Foods will be very happy to take that on, upgrade, upskill, so we improve quality. The one thing, I go back and I'll close with this. The difference, you might say, well, Moyo, you're saying micro-business, that's just a fancy word. No, it's not. It actually has an economic impact. Because once you recognize somebody as a micro-business in a community or in a rural area, that person is working for profit. And when you're working for profit, you are efficient. If I do a program myself, I employ an agronomist, she wants a car, she wants a house, the fixed cost, it becomes immediately a fixed cost. So we become inefficient. But if we're intentional about looking at folks who are growing, whether it's a chicken project, that person is working for profit. They want to optimize the resources, the inputs that are going into whatever activity. So I think this is how we need to look at it and re-educate ourselves, reorient ourselves, have these rural-urban linkages and linkages to consumption. I submit.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much. A round of applause for the Chairman of ZITF. Chairman for Parliamentary Portfolio Committee on Industry and Commerce. Are MPs getting this kind of approach? Are we aligned to what industry is thinking and what you from a legislative arm are seeing?
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, I would want to start by commenting the wonderful presentations by the panelists. But obviously for us, from our side as parliamentarians, we play largely an oversight role, looking at the policies that have been put in place by the government, and the policies, some of them, we work together with the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee, and we ensure that implementation is done. But what I wanted to comment and probably seek clarity from the presenters, first to comment on the presentation by Dr. Nyambadza on the need for us to change our vocabulary. Surely this is very critical, but it will require complementary investments. If you look, we have got quite a number of areas that are endowed with some resources, but they don't have basic infrastructure. You are looking at roads, you are looking at rail, you are looking at energy. All these, they are not there. But this is quite noble to say we should invest, especially in the rural areas where our people are. But it requires complementary investments. What I wanted clarity on, Mr. Cheure, you spoke of skills requirements. But obviously for us as industry and commerce, we have got a number of value chains. We have got leather value chain, cotton value chain, iron and steel value chain, food processing, fertilizer, yeah, and all that. But from your analysis, which value chains do you really see to say we have got serious gaps? And at the moment, we have got quite a number of trained people who may not be skilled enough. As Zimbabwe, are we having expatriates? Are we importing labor? Then on Mr. Gondo and maybe Dr. Marikana, quite a number of youth feel that they can come up with a paper and then come to your bank and then get money. Do you assist them to come up with the bankable projects? Because our major undoing, even at national level, we go out and market. You see what the Minister of State were doing. But sometimes we just say we've got 300 hectares of land, we've got Marula, we've got that. But what is critical is, are those ideas bankable? So the bankability of those projects is lacking sometimes. And then the last one, again, I think which can be addressed by Dr. Marikana, is on what was put in place by the RBZ, collateral registry. What is the uptake, and are you recognizing it? Collateral registry, where I can use my mbudzi, my ngombe, as collateral, as long as it is registered with the RBZ. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll take another question right at the back there. I see a hand right at the back there. The gentleman with the white shirt. And then I'll take another question, the gentleman in the suit. And then I'm going to give an opportunity for you to answer. Director of Ceremonies, how much time do we have left? Doc? Let me just take this round of questions and we close up. Thank you. Yes, please stand up, just introduce yourself and ask your question.
Thank you. My name is Dr. Mugadza, Director Research and Innovation, Great Zimbabwe University. I think this is an interesting topic for me. I'm a food scientist by profession. So I think I'll just break down the questions quickly. The first one is food processing is an energy intensive.
Who are you directing the question to?
The energy one, I'm not sure who can answer that because...
Okay, just ask.
Yeah.
That's fine.
How do we have systems in place to sustain the energy requirements? I will put in an example. As Great Zimbabwe, we are setting up a processing plant for small grains and to connect electricity by Mandamabwe there. We're charged 587,000 USD. So do we have systems in place to support rural industrialization? Same as potable water. Then the next one is on machinery. Maybe this one I'm directing to the banks or those in finance sector. Food processing equipment is very expensive, but at the same time, food is a low profit product. Probably you gain 2 cents, 1 cent for each product. I think for this bottle of water, you gain 1 cent as profit. Now, as the funder, are you willing to say this is a group of youths from the rural? They want to be funded with probably 50,000 to set up a plant. And we all know that probably they are going to realize their profits 4, 5, 6 years down the line. Are you willing to do that? My last one is just a comment out of experience as well, that we are mentioning collaboration, but I think there is no incentive in collaborating. Recently, in that plant that we are installing, what happened is we went into the rural communities, asked them how they process small grains. Then we went back to the engineering team and we then partnered with Indians and Chinese guys to come up with a proper industrial plant for small grains, because they need the roasting part, the de-hulling and so on, which is not the same process as our own maize. So I think what's lacking also is that incentive for collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll take the last question from the gentleman here. Please give him the microphone.
Good afternoon, all protocol observed. The name is Jacob Nyati. I'm the secretary for the Zimbabwe Leather Development Council, an organization that is charged with the development of the leather value chain. But I'm fairly familiar with the cotton to clothing value chain as well. I will do more of a comment based on what I have heard. Particularly, the first comment I'm directing it to skills. You almost lost me, say, when you were talking about these graduates from VTCs, from universities. I think when we are talking rural industrialization, we need to really rethink our approach. I think there is a program now that is going to be rolled out, or it has been rolled out, where we are going to have these village units, business units. So the VTCs, universities will take us 3 years, 4 years. So we need to think of redesigning our programs, working as a collaborative. Your ministry, Ministry of SMEs, local RDCs, and also our traditional leadership, so that we can actually train people short trainings that are very specific to a certain trade. I'll give you our example from the leather value chain. We have rolled out a number of programs where we start with taking these youths, putting them in some of the established, unfortunately there are not many well-established big companies in leather value addition. So we'll then take them up to the more experienced clusters or SME manufacturers. Then they learn, and then afterwards we give them the training to upgrade their skill. And then after, we need to go to quality. So there we also work with SARS, we work with standards and so forth, and obviously our partner ministry of SMEs. So we really obviously need to rethink the whole thing, how we do things. I think I would like to really stress that.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
I'll quickly then direct, I would ask first Dr. Markanda in short, just to answer. You've got about 3 questions which were alluded to you. I'll answer the power one. But essentially, yes, you were asked a question by the chairperson for the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee about the bankability of projects. We've also had the same thing being asked also by Dr. Mgadzade from University of Zimbabwe. He alludes to a group of youth who've got projects which are bankable to be paid back in 6 years. Are you giving such facilities? Can you just try and summarize all the questions?
Thank you very much. Yes, in terms of, the question was, do you come up with bankable projects? I think this is the uniqueness of the Women's Bank and the Empower Bank, because when the call to say there is your bank there was made, people would come in their numbers. They literally come without any knowledge of what they want to do, but all they require is money. So you have to walk the journey with them. That's why financial literacy becomes important. And then you would develop their passion, their idea, which has made us to start with smaller amounts. So when you've got someone getting an amount between $50 and $300, you're minimizing the risk in the process, but you're allowing them to grow little by little as they would go. This one, we have a percentage of people that we have whom we introduced in detergents making, bakeries. Rev was talking about retooling. That's one of the things that we've done just to answer on the issue of assets, the kind of assets we look at. Yes, it's expensive to retool, but from this lower 60% of our economically active people, they don't require sophisticated machinery. So at times it's just a dehauler, at times it's a chigayo, chineta, stock feed, and then you have this aggregation, someone does that. So we have found that it goes a long way. Collateral registry, it comes a step further, because most of these, they come in without any form of security. And then we then use the group lending, peer-to-peer support that comes through. Or you then say no security, but you then take the community support. Let's say Ndisabuku or is someone from church who offers another layer of overseeing what they are doing. So it's a form of security. Then once they buy something, that's when they register to the collateral registry. So it becomes another stage of security. But for those who come with their cars, they would come in, and we definitely, collateral registry has been very helpful. Then in terms of food processing equipment, there was a question that was asked, are we open to that? Yes, we are. We have what we call, village banking. Village banking, it's almost like the whole community, they are structured in different groups. And from each group, you have got a representative. So they form another layer. So it's like a triangle with different layers of responsibility. When you offer chigayo in that kind of a community, not one person is qualifies for that. But when you offer to them, one is the one who does dehowling, the other one does this. Yes, we offer that kind of support.
Good.
It's supposed to be having lazy capital, but we realize we don't have lazy capital right now. So in our case, maybe it goes up to 2 years. 3 years. But right now with partnerships, we now have loans that span over 3-5 years, even up to 10 years, like in housing, because you are partnering with others who have capital, which can be safeguarded because they've seen what we are doing. They know them back to end. They are not going to lose their money. And we become their security. So they bring a deposit to the bank, which then benefits the people who are below. They may not take a stake, but they know their money is coming. It's cheaper than going on to the money that is available on the market, which is expensive.
Thank you very much, Dr. Markana. I'm going to ask Mr. Gondo quickly to just support the policy direction that the ministry is taking.
Thank you very much. I'll respond to the question by Honorable Chidua to say, are we supporting youths to come up with business proposals? Yes. As a ministry, we have got business development officers that are found at every provincial office and at every district office, and we have community development coordinators that are in every ward around the country. And one of the key courses that we take our communities, our people through is we have got a course which we call Start and Improve Your Business. And this is a course that is aimed at assisting potential entrepreneurs, the youths, women, and everyone who wants to start a business, just to help them. How do you generate a business idea? And when you have a business idea, how then do you put it on paper so that it is bankable? So we work closely with other institutions like the Ministry of Youth, our bank here, the Women's Bank, and also even SMEDCO, the Small and Medium Enterprise Development Corporation, to make sure that we support. But the demand is huge. And we need to do more because more of our people are coming into business, and we need to continue training the youths that are coming from schools. They need to be assisted. So we'll continue to do more with partnerships with other organizations. I think we will be able to achieve quite a lot.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chawere, please can you answer the questions that were asked? I think there are 2 questions. And just also elaborate on the area of skills development. It seems like everyone in the rural village has to be a business person. Yet we had Mr. Nyabadza saying that at some point they were employing 1,000 people. Obviously, there are certain skill sets that are needed to support even when investors go into rural areas. Please, can you demystify that? Because it's almost like every youth has to have a business. No, but there are some youth who have trained in certain skills which can then be employed by certain companies that come. Can you try and elaborate and just answer the question as well?
Thank you, Engineer Mguti. Let me first respond to the first question about I think it was a comment or more of a question about the value chains. What we are saying as a ministry is this. In this country, each province has got a unique resource endowment. They've got a unique agricultural produce. We talk of National Central, we know the Mzaraban, there are lots of Masawi there. We talk of Mutoko, Mash East, there are lots of tomatoes there. We talk of Manika Land, there are lots of Magogoya, Madumbe. Let's go much south here, there are lots of Mpani. So what are we saying as the ministry? In each province where there are resources, those resources should be matched with the skills that are able to value add and benefit the resources. Are we, as we speak today, do we have vocational training centers which are training skills that are relevant in those communities, that are relevant to validate our Mpani worms? Do we have those vocational training centers that trains? We are still very, very far behind training the traditional, those skills that were being trained 45 years ago, that were being trained 25 years ago. But we have to move very fast with speed to begin to realize that in Mutoko we have got tomatoes. There are lots of post-harvest losses. Because why? There are plenty. We don't have, like what Deputy Chief Secretary has mentioned, there is no equipment. And for us to produce the equipment, we need to have people with the skills to do to produce the tools, the dyes, the molds. So production of machinery also requires a skill. So skills, they are overarching. They cut across all. So what we are saying is let's have a match of the resource endowments with the right skills. Our vocational training centers, our training institutions, they should begin to warm up to look what we have in Mamat South. Are we having the vocational training centers in those communities bringing those skills? Then the other one that was asked was the issue of having qualifications and having not expatriates coming to Zimbabwe. We have become a certificate-oriented nation. People pride in having a master's, they pride in having a PhD, they pride in having a professorship. Where are the skills? Where are the skills? But the question is, if we are having all those highly qualified people, why are we having people who are highly qualified but not employed? It means that there is a mismatch between what's being obtained from those institutions and what is on the ground. That's why I was saying our CEO, the chairman of the ZITF, and the captains of industry, the moment they begin to say we need these kind of skills, and our higher and tertiary learning institutions, our vocational training institutions, they warm up to the industrial needs. Then what it means, a graduate will come straight from a university and fits into industry.
Thank you.
And it doesn't mean that every youth here in Zimbabwe is supposed to be a businessman. No. We should establish skills training centers which trains our youth, our rural women, to be able to value add their matimbi, to be able to store, to pack, and to commercialize all those resources in their communities.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to end here. Unfortunately, we have another session, and fortunate enough, which is starting. But let me just conclude by saying, can we have a round of applause to all the panelists and the contributors to this session? What has been very clear, ladies and gentlemen, is that the capacity building in terms of food processing and enterprises requires a paradigm shift. It also means that we are not moving into an era of entitlement, but that of bankability and having the general capacity. It also means that if we do and play our cards right, it means that a lot of jobs are going to be created, and we will stop a lot of rural to urban migration as people are going to work in those communities. Zimbabwe from 1984 pronounced the 13 principles of decentralization and industrialization at the time of the Prime Minister. And today, as Mr. Nyabadza said, we are still following some of those principles where we believe everything should be done in the city. I would like to implore all of us, ladies and gentlemen, to take heed of the different comments that came from our panelists today and continue to engage throughout the sessions and throughout ZITF and continue to network. And we are hoping that Secretary for Industry and Commerce and the Honorable Minister would be able to guide the relevant government arms to ensure that now we progressively work going forward. Otherwise, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Engineer Tafadzwa Mguti, Permanent Secretary for Presidential Affairs in the Office of His Excellency. I would like to thank you all for being attentive and allow me the time to be your moderator for this session as I ask for our panelists, as you give them another round of applause, to join the audience again. Thank you very much. Director of Ceremonies, you can take over.
Thanks, Engineer, for a session well moderated. So I was saying to you, it's a hard act to follow, but I shall take your advice. Everything he said, I agree. And to the panelists, thanks for setting the scene. I think the people who put this program together, there was some logic to it. What we have heard, and I think I'm going to call the next panel, and I'll explain why I think there's some logic to it. The next panel is on community-based approaches to sustainable industrialization. And we have Deputy Chief Secretary to the President and Cabinet, Reverend P. Damasane. Sir. We have the Ministry of Environment, Climate, Wildlife. I don't know who is representing that ministry. Can the person come forward? Yes, ma'am. Come. We have UN, UNIDO. Somebody from UNIDO, United Nations Development. Yes. Anyone from UNIDO? Okay, no UNIDO person here. Okay, so that, then do we have somebody from NAST? Anyone from NAST? NAST have disappeared. What are Emma? Emma? Okay, sir. National Chiefs Council? National Chiefs Council? Okay. UNDP? Yes, sir. If you need UNDP. You need to you are from Emma, okay. Except Reverend. Since Engineer Moguti set a good example, I've asked them to give me their names so I can also call them by name, sir. The way the session was put together, I think, is interesting in the sense that the previous session was specifically about the one value chain in the food processing enterprises. And there are many value chains, but the idea is that one sector, one particular focus, people who do things, whether they are women's affairs who are training people, whether it is Ministry of Skills Audit, which is engaging in terms of getting, understanding human capacity require, Zimbabwe Youth Council, training young people and empowering them, Youth Empowerment Bank, lending money, making finance available, small medium enterprise, SME, Zimbabwe Chamber, again, working with the member of very specific people they work with, Padenga Holdings, a company that works on an industry, National Foods Holding the same, and Biro Rudisi Council, clearly they are implement projects. This session is about approaches to sustainable development. These are the people who deal with the processes. Therefore, they complement. And here, I want to set it out in the context of, is there writing? Have I got the list? I would like to kind of set the text, the tone, the way I'm going to, the framework I'm going to approach this session. We are talking about rural industrialization. And if we accept that rural industrialization is the application of knowledge, technology, and finance, which we just heard from. We just heard people talking about finance. We heard about people, machinery. In order to produce a value-added product in an enterprise, and enterprises are run by two kinds of people. They are started by innovators and entrepreneurs. They are not, government sometimes tries to do it, but in the end, they still have to find a management, an entrepreneurship, people with enterprise. For the market, that's are the consumers, in order to earn a return. That's why they said, both with Samoyo and Nyabaza said, they are working for a living. They are doing it because they want a profit. If we accept that, what this group is going to be trying to figure out is, how do we empower these people? How do we empower these innovators, these entrepreneurs? In a community, within the framework, how do we approach it when you go the community-based approach? Because if the communities, and a community is not necessarily villagers, it can be a community of entrepreneurs, of youth. be a community of women who are working on a cooperative. It's a community. But the point, how do we approach them to empower them? And if we accept, and this is why I'm asking the framework, and they are free to modify it, that is, empowerment requires people to have the information, from those who have it to those who need it. We heard a lot about information, the panelists that was there before, talking about the information we need. They need to participate as their enterprises. They need to be accountable to the market, to the customers, to the banks, to the organization, to the rural district councils. An enterprise needs to be accountable to a whole series of people working in the ecosystem. And finally, they need to manage and implement their enterprise themselves in their own organization, not somebody else doing it for them doing it themselves. And therefore, that's the question is said, not everyone is an entrepreneur. Not everyone is an innovator. There are some who will innovate, but there are others who will be participating in that ecosystem. So what I would like to ask my panel participants, is there anything I said in terms of empowerment, whether it's information, whether it is participation in terms of whether it is the accountability in the way these, whether it is the helping people manage organization, that your organization does to help, that would help grow industrialization? Is it clear? Any of those? Or if you feel it's not relevant, give us one thing you feel, yes, that's something we do to make sure those people who are here before and like them can become successful. Who wants to start? Sir.
Thank you very much. Well, I was introduced earlier as Reverend Tamasane. I lead the Social Services Department in the Office of the President and Cabinet. To us, I think, Dr. Mungai, one of the things that we ought to understand is, where does industrialization come in within the broad spectrum of the vision for development? All along, I think for quite a long, the first 6 years of the Second Republic, the understanding has always been, let's revitalize the industries, and the focus was always in the city industries. But when we now realized that there is a lot that needs to be done in the rural areas, we then decided as government that we should then change the narrative. And the narrative has been changing. In the last few years, you would realize, and I'm just going to give you a couple of figures now. The first figure that I'll give is when we went in to the rural areas to do what was later going to be called village business units. The idea was, you don't have to come to town in order to run a business enterprise in the horticulture industry. Because you have the soil where you are, you have water. If you don't have water, let's bring in the borehole. Let's harness the knowledge that you have in the area. And that is what has happened. And you then create out of that an entrepreneurship. In other words, you create the community understanding that they can make a livelihood out of what they have. We are no longer thinking of them as people that are being given money as it were, or given aid as it were. Secondly, it is to change the family setup by making sure that the family looks at itself as the source of its own livelihood. And that means you make the family work within themselves and see themselves as part of an ecosystem that is linked to the community wherein they are. And how do you do that? You then make each family productive, but they produce then in order to exchange. And why did we approach it this way? It is because this is how the people in the rural areas have always been living. But
they have not been attaching livelihood to the things that they've been doing day in and day out. So when you then attach livelihood to it, that's when you bring in what Engineer Mguti made me say earlier, a retooling exercise that changes them to say, yes, we grow this product, but this product has to help another person or is needed by the other person, but they're not going to get it for free. But if more people then want it, I need to then improve what I am doing. So in other words, when you do that, it stimulates what we will then call industrial activity. And you are stimulating it out of what they already have been doing, because you have created an extra value in that product that they have. If we just leave it as it is, it will not do much. And because I love goats, I will go back to the goat example again. Now, it is understood that goats are some of the easiest animals that you can either multiply or even grow. A goat only feeds for 2.5 hours to 3 hours in a day. The rest of the day, it is just ruminating on what it has eaten. And a goat gives you a kid or two every 6 months, so they can multiply. But our goats have not been doing that. We know it does that, but they have not been doing that. So the idea now is, let us stimulate an activity around goats that will become industrial. In other words, inform them that you can do this and make sure that you protect it. So that's why the rural industrialization 8.0 comes in with certain attributes. One of them is, let us then give you medication so that your goats don't die. And that is linked to the tick grease arrangement. So that's what government comes in to say, okay, you don't have to be dipping them a lot of times because you don't have the water, but here is a substitute that will still keep ticks away. Then after that, we then challenge, which is where our universities have to kind of change their thinking. I think you will realize that our big industrialized elements like the Marula factory, the Maoyu factory, all these are big things, but if you don't start them small, they'll give you a problem. The president opened that factory for the Marula thing, but it took almost a year before it became something that moves. Why? Because we started too big, and the people don't quite understand how we can do that with a seasonal product. And they're saying, no, we only did this once in a year. So the idea now of letting them know that it can grow. And that's how you will find that it's only now that the Marula wine is becoming more and more useful from that Chiredzi plant that we have in Mwenezi, sorry. And lastly, I would say that the people that we approach as government and that we want to really make sure that they come to the party as government are the young people. Why? Because it is easier to transfer knowledge and information to young people. Secondly, the group that we need to also get the mindset shifted on are the women. Why? Because the women are mostly there in the rural areas. I dare say, if Nyabaza was asked, of the 1,000 employees that they had in their farm, in their factory, how many of them were women? You find all the men go to the city to look for work, but women stay at home and they work at home. And even right now, those of you that have got good farm managers, you will find that the best farm manager is a woman. And it's not because we are feminist or anything, but it is because there is something that was wired in a woman that unfortunately was not wired in a man. and you will ask God when you get to heaven for that. I don't know what it is. They need men, but at times they can do without men. And that's what is important. So government looks at these two groups not because these are disadvantaged groups, but it is because these two groups, the youth and women, have a certain quality that gives us an advantage. And I want you to understand that it's not because they are disadvantaged. No. It's not because they are vulnerable. No. It is because they have something that is better in them, in their capacity. I have a woman next to me, so I have to be very careful.
Thank you, Reverend. Thank you, Reverend.
I could go on, sir.
By the way, do we have anyone, the CEO of Dinson? Did he come? The CEO of Dinson. Are you joining us, aren't you? Please come forward. Sorry? Please, can you join us? What I would like to ask you is to listen to the panelists and see whether you can, anything they say that resonates with the way you are doing business in Dinson. Because you belong to the other group which really are the doers. They are talking about the processes and the kind of support. And the question is, whether there is anything that they say that resonates with the way you are doing business in Dinson, in the way you are approaching rural industrialization. Does that make sense, sir? Yes, sir. So, Reverend Amasani talked about entrepreneurship is about moving from handout to hand up. That is, the idea is you help people, don't give them free things. You talk about that an environment, the Sunday from a government point of view is creating an environment that's supportive of market operations. That market that is about the exchange, and that's what he used. And he also talked about university-driven production. And the question is, how does that fit in with the equations of handout, plus hand up, plus as market operations, and the process of innovators and innovation? And that's an important question raising in the ecosystem. In that, there are people who have been active in the handouts. At least they are called donors. And I think one of them is UNDP. They have always said UNDP is a donor. So they have been seen as people who hand out. In this new environment of rural industrialization, where we are looking for hand-ups rather than handouts, what would you want to say you are doing specifically in that area? Sir, UNDP.
Good evening. Please allow me to say in the protocol already observed. The theme that sustainable industrialization, explore industrialization models that minimize environmental impact, resonates the work of the United Nations Development Program. We work in the areas of environmental management, renewable energy, climate smart agriculture, MSSs, small and medium size companies for value addition, Africa Free Trade Area, and sustainable SDG. The potential of business largely lies in the potential of the country itself. Zimbabwe has vast potential in many sectors, not only in the key nature-based economic sectors, but also in its rich human capital from both the skill and an entrepreneurial perspective. This potential is not being maximized for industrialization due to high proportion of export of raw material and limited value addition. Strong and sustainable industrialization can only thrive where there is conducive and enabling environment. Sound, inclusive, and forward-looking policies are therefore a fundamental prerequisite. That is why UNDP is supporting policy development upstream and support community-based activities downstream. In 170 countries where we are, as a United Nations Development Program, we support upstream through helping institutions working with us on policy development, legal and institutional framework development. Large part of the United Nations development work is conducted at grassroots level, working with communities in providing economic empowerment and helping to reduce inequality in line with our mandate. The work of the United Nations Development Program includes key input to drivers of industrialization, including skill development, access to finance, renewable energy, light equipment. These are the drivers of rural industrialization. The main thrust of UNDP's making community-based industrialization is the community business unit based on His Excellency the President's vision of village business unit, who provides the key input that enables communities to productive and empowered and to lay a strong foundation for industrialization at community level. Note that each village business unit comprises of water supply through borehole and irrigation, renewable energy training and infrastructure, including microgrids and biogas. Market intervention, including storage and process cold chain solutions. ICT and digital infrastructure, including through e-payment and weather monitoring. Social and public services, climate resilience and disaster preparedness through installing and operationalizing early warning systems. Youth and women economic empowerment through business members skill training and grant. Each unit is self-sustaining, resilient, and community full, capable of contributing to rural industrialization when it is working well. So far, the United Nations Development Program has helped establish 11 of these hubs and is scheduled to establish another 15 in 2025. The task is huge, only to UNDP, to the government. That is why UNDP is calling for partnership to work with Zimbabwe, the journey of rural industrialization. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And you didn't put the name down, I will have to get your name later. Thank you very much for discussing the space, what you might call the collaboration between the public and private sector, in the case supporting governments, UNDP, but also working with the city communities who are normally private actors in the collaboration in provision of services, production and provision of services. Some are paid for by the state, but some individuals buy them free. So there's an entrepreneurship relationship between people who produce and the people who fund them. In that respect, anyone who knows what it looks like to work in the rural areas, in that collaboration, we run into one person called the chief, or below the chief, the headman. And if you fail to have collaboration in there and you want to do business there, I think you might find yourself in a bit of a sticky situation. So I would like to call Chief Kumalo to kind of talk about a little bit about the impact, the role, the facilitation or collaboration has in the way the rural industrialization can take place. Chief Kumalo, sir. Goes.
I think I need this to be up a bit.
You are taller than me.
Yeah, I am.
Yes, sir.
That's right. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. All protocols observed. Mr. Moderator, I want to start by saying that although the concept of industrialization is unique in our customs, But the government is in its own wisdom, when we attained independence, came up with a statute called the Traditional Leaders Act, which established the structures under the Chiefs Council. The structures are right down, you'll excuse me for taking you right down to the village. I know most of you do not come from the village, but unfortunately I do come from the village. The structures start right down at a village level, where the chairperson is what we call Sabugu, or what they call a village head in that statute I've referred to. He or she has 5 members, 4 members of that committee, and among those 5 members, one of them is a youth and the other is a lady. So the women and the youth are represented from the grassroots, going up to, from that village to the ward, to the district. And at district level, there is what we call the Rural District Council. Maybe before I get to that, at district level, the headman, who is the assistant to the chief, is the one who chairs the structures. But when it comes to the district, which is the Rural District Council level, some of the chiefs do sit at council level. But where I want to explain is that no decision is taken at any of those levels unless it goes through the entire community in that village. So it is important for someone, let's imagine someone wants to moot this idea of industrialization. If, for instance, he wants to start at a village level, that community must come to an agreement whether it wants it or it doesn't want it. If that person wants to start that idea of an industrialization at council level, it will have to go down again to the village for the villagers to accept it or reject it. But in majority of cases, if the majority of the villagers have accepted the concept, it usually flows right through. It never has any problems. But there is no shortcut to any decision that is made on behalf of the community. It is that particular community that has to accept or reject the concept that has been brought before it. The concept of industrialization, I said, is a unique concept in our tradition. So what is important for traditional leaders like ourselves and the villagers and the headmen, including even some of the councillors who are of my age maybe, they are councillors who are of my age in rural areas. They have to align their cultural values with what is happening today. It is important to adjust because we don't want to live in Stone Age. Nobody wants to live in Stone Age. You must adjust to the present conditions of life within your communities. So it is important for whatever is decided to come from the community during following those structures I've alluded to. Someone might say, or might ask and say, but why are some of you in the Senate? Yes, that particular act and the Constitution of 2013, Chapter 15 to be precise, provides, among other things, for chiefs to sit in the Senate. Although we sit, some of us, in the Senate, we still go down to the grassroots whatever we want to discuss with on their behalf, we don't pass anything on their behalf. We go down to them and discuss issues with them, and they have to accept them or reject them. So it is really, unfortunately, an ordinary person cannot choose a chief to a position. So the chiefs that sit in the Senate are chosen by an electoral college for chiefs that chooses about 2 chiefs from each province to sit in the Senate, but they still go down to their grassroots levels. They don't say they are up there. They have nothing to do with their people on the grassroots level. They still go down to their grassroots levels. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chief Kumalo, for making a rather critical point. Most of us who have gone to universities and spent a lot of years in institutional learning forget. And I only try and phrase it the way I understood him to say it. That there is need, he talked about the adaptiveness and alignment of industrialization to tradition. That is, industrialization needs to adapt and align itself with tradition. At the same time, tradition adapting and adjusting and aligning itself to the demands of industrialization. So it is that intersection he was talking about, is how do we make sure the two of them talk to each other and accommodate each other in spite of their different demands. And as a chief, he sits in that space, and he said he is in the Senate. And I will just make one point before I call the next speaker, because the next 2 speakers are going to be talking to this space. I was reminded that the chiefs, if you read chapter 17 of the Constitution, the chief is the only authority in this country with all 3 powers: executive, legislative, and judiciary. The chief can have you prosecuted for misdemeanors in the village. He can pass judgment, the sentence you're going to serve, and he can have you locked up. There's no other institution in the Constitution that allows any other institution to do it. There's judiciary, the executive, and legislature. Only the chief in chapter 17 has those 3 powers. So if you're going to do business in a rural district council and there is nowhere you can do business other than a piece of land with some authority, the chief or general administration, you need to understand this intersection between industrialization and tradition. Now, when you go there, you might run foul of 2 particular regulations. One, they are called the ESGs, the environmental and social governance issues. And there, the first one you run into is the Ministry of Environment. And here, and after that, comes the people who apply the stick called EMA. So I shall be asking first the people who do the policy side, Professor Patience Mutopo from Ministry of Environment, to come and say something about how this stick you yield, at least you're responsible for it, what would you like to share with us in terms of what it is you bring to rural industrialization? Professor.
Thank you so much, Chair. Okay, I think it's good. A very good afternoon to you. I will ride on the already established protocols, and thank you so much, Chair. The Ministry of Environment, Climate and Wildlife is mandated with issues to do with environmental governance, issues to do with climate information, how does it reach to people, and issues to do with conserving the environment, which leads us to biodiversity conservation as we have wildlife. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to start from our Constitution. Section 73 says that each and every Zimbabwean has a right to a health and safe climate as well as environment. Those are given rights, they are justiciable rights, but what we have to take into account is that those who give the rights have got a responsibility, and also the rights holders have got a responsibility. What I like about today is the theme, the broader theme on rural industrialization. With regards to environment, we have to look at issues of environmental stewardship. I like what already the chief has already said, that there are ties within the traditional setup where environmental governance laws also exist within our traditional facet. Then what I want to emphasize is that the Environmental Management Act, again, is one of the chief promulgation of how we need to preserve the environment. And I know the Environmental Management Agency is here, represented by Mr. Kangata, is going to go deeper into that. Then I'm going to talk a bit about climate. Everyone says that it's not raining. It is the mandate of the ministry to ensure that climate information reaches people. Climate information comes in three facets. There is the rainfall bit, which is mandated with the Meteorological Services Department. That is information to do with weather, the condition of the atmosphere at any given time, at any given parameter, the issue of agroecological zoning. And what we need to understand here is that there's a sort of a unilateral balance between what the Ministry of Environment, Climate and Wildlife does, because it works in unison with the Ministry of Agriculture. Because when we talk about rainfall patterns, the Ministry of Agriculture also comes in, but the information comes from us. We are the ones who project the weather pattern every day. We give weather patterns, whether it's going to rain, whether it's going to be hot, whether it's going to be cold, and we also give aviation information so that our planes, and this is quite important because in the morning when the presentations were made, there was emphasis that as there is rural industrialization, let's also move towards what I'm going to term green transportation. People were saying that we now also need the airspace. So this information is actually important aviation information from a weather perspective. Then, in terms of climate again, we also need to understand that the weather is changing each and every day. So how do we also fit in? Because we exist within different facets. We exist within SADC, we exist within the African Union, and we also, at a global level, we are saying that we have global warming. So how do we sort of codify ourselves when we are saying that we need to industrialize within the rural sector? Let's take into account that the climate is changing, and how do we bring it about? Because Zimbabwe is largely agrarian. This takes us back again to agroecological zoning. Are we going to remodel our zones? Are we going to adjust? And how are our business enterprises going to be modeled? This again comes to the importance of climate information and climate dissemination. What the ministry has done in that regard is that through the Meteorological Services Department, each and every district has got a weather station that is mandated through Agri-Tex as well as the provincial meteorological officer. It ensures that information reaches farmers particularly about the condition of the atmosphere each and every day. So what has happened is that we have worked with other development partners. Emma was also part of that project, one of our parastatals, Zimpax, because remember, climate also affects wildlife. So in this project, what we have done is that farmers receive climate information daily via an application. This application, it can be on your smartphone or it can be on your normal phone, where you get a daily update 3 times of the weather, how it's going to be like. What we are trying to do is that we are trying to upscale, because this project started 2014, and some of the rain gauges, you know, with the advent of technology, they are also changing. So we are trying to get into a second phase and see how it's going to work. Then with regards to climate again, the other important thing is that what we need to do, because we're an agro-led nation, is that we need to practice climate smart agriculture. But climate smart agriculture takes into effect if we really understand our rainfall patterns. This takes me to the notion of gender and the notion of inclusivity. So all our messages that are predicted in terms of weather, access to weather information, People have to have it in our lingua francas, all our local languages, so that everyone gets to understand. And we've also now started a program on school children. I've seen that there's so much talk about youth inclusivity. It's also part of it, where we are saying that children should start learning about weather and understanding reading about the weather at a young age. Then when it comes to wildlife, we are advocating for biodiversity conservation. I think some of you recently in March, we concluded a very big study which led to us developing the National Biodiversity Strategic Action Plan, where we went to the communities and asked them what they wanted to see in that document. But what we are promulgating in that is we are promulgating community-based approaches to biodiversity conservation. It should start with the communities as it cascades up, so that our policies are community sensitive. I'm sure the document is going to be out, and I want to emphasize target 21 to target 23. Target 21 emphasizes on disability mainstreaming in biodiversity protection. Target 22 emphasizes on the importance of local level knowledge in biodiversity conservation, and target 23 emphasizes the importance of gender responsive and gender transformative approaches in biodiversity conservation. And then lastly, I'm going to talk about the synergies that we do. We are now advocating also for green transportation, as we emphasize on rural industrialization. I like what people in rural localities do. They walk, which is one of the major tenets of green transportation. Let's do away with emissions using our big vehicles, our Toyota Hiluxes. They have got higher emission rates that affect our hydrological sphere and affects our rainfall patterns. Thank you. I can see the chairs on my neck. Thank you.
Thanks, Prof. Environmental stewardship. And there we're going to ask Emma in a minute to come and say something about how they help, how they support those doing businesses, make sure that at least they are also doing, when they do business, they are also doing environmental stewardship. But before I do that, let me announce a message I've been given. Somebody who was having dinner, lunch at Hall 1 upper level, lost their wallet. We think it's a woman's wallet. We have the photograph, I think. And is a person here who lost a wallet with their personal details. Getting an ID can be sometimes. Okay, I have the phone number for you with the person to call. You will get your wallet back. It's been found, and it is in safe hands. Nothing has been gone missing. The Ministry of, somebody in the Ministry of Environment. Now, biodiversity conservation sounds like a business. And it's so, there is an intersection between knowledge and business. And the Professor Dinku reminded me as we talked something he forgot to say. That is, we all go to university and we seem not to have been taught, and I quote, how to make money from knowledge. So here is biodiversity conservation, that is knowledge we need to get, and the question, how do we turn it into money, and how does Emma help us rather than hinder us from making money from biodiversity conservation? Sir.
Thank you very much, moderator. I'm from the Environmental Management Agency. My name is Teddy Kangata. I'm a director there. The purpose for the existence of EMA is to ensure sustainable utilization of natural resources and the protection of the environment. And further to that, EMA comes up with plans to abate pollution, biodiversity loss, as well as land degradation. So all what we have been discussing since morning suits very well in the environmental sphere, where anything and everything that we do should be friendly to the environment. And the topic that we have at hand, Chair, is talking about community-led industrialization or approaches community-led approaches to industrialization. Allow me to unpack the term community, because at times we overuse it and we use it having different perspectives. I'll just give two working definitions pertaining to community. One, community refers to a group of people with the same interests. That's one definition that we can use. Like in this particular case, we are together, a group of people, similar interests or same interests, we are a community. Secondly is a group of people bound by geographical space. It's also a community, and hence you can have a community within a community. So you will be then looking at interests and the geographical space. As Emma, we do support issues to do with rural industrialization, simply for the simple reason that a rural industrialization extends or provides livelihood options for communities so that they do not just depend on the environment, but they've got other forms of livelihood. When people have other forms of livelihood, the environment is not the only safety net. They can have other livelihood options. But however, the industrialization that we must take, regardless of level, it's one that would have all the three components of sustainable development, where our industrialization is supposed to be economically viable. We should make money. There should be a dollar sign to it. And secondly, it must be socially acceptable, or culturally acceptable. We should get a social license from communities in terms of whatever we would want to undertake. And then thirdly, it must be environmentally friendly. So anything that we do should keep into the three tenets of sustainable development. And then that will give us sustainability. When we talk of sustainability, we are now looking at perpetuity, things that would end for a very long time or will never end. It's simply because we would have balanced the three components of sustainable development. And for us as Emma, what we have been doing and what we do is we have the environmental and social impact assessment process, the ASIA. It allows communities, it allows industries to ensure that those three components are brought together. And so far as Emma, we have reviewed, since our inception in 2007, we have reviewed about 20,000 environmental and social impact assessment documents, which is a clear sign that we are in the right trajectory in as far as balancing environmental issues, social issues, as well as economic issues. There's also an adage that we use in the sector, that ecology without economy is naive. You can't just have a good environment where you can't then tap and have a dollar sign. But the flip side calls upon for responsibility, where economy without ecology becomes irresponsible. So let's be responsible, either as communities, as corporate sector. Let's all be responsive and be responsible. And further to that, whenever we work with communities, we must ride on the indigenous technical knowledge systems. Don't try and bring something that is sort of foreign to the communities whenever you are doing any form of industrialization. Undertake the necessary baseline, understand what they need, what are their needs, and then you build up from there. In the morning, I've been following keenly in terms of rural industrialization, and some of the issues left me wondering a bit, where issues to do with ice cream, yogurt at rural levels, and you would wonder, are these the people's needs? So we mustn't bring things that are foreign, but let's couch them. Let's ensure that they are grounded to people's realities. And environmental compliance is very, very key to ensure that whatever form of industrialization we are undertaking will not leave communities poorer than before, and they would not leave the environment degraded. Issues to do with waste management, emissions, dust suppression. You should not bring other impacts that were foreign to an area in the name of industrialization. So there should be that balance, and communities should eagerly accept any form of industrialization. I thank you, Moderator.
Thank you very much for a steady Kangate, for your enlightenment on this biodiversity and conservation, environmental stewardship, whereby responsible ecology with economy also requires that you must integrate indigenous knowledge systems. And I think it's an important philosophical concept in terms of approach, which I think Chief Kumalo will definitely talk to, because indigenous knowledge systems, they are quite often communities and institutions, traditional institutions are holders of the indigenous knowledge system, which often we haven't documented, but needs to be documented. Now, there's a man here, project manager, represents the CEO of Dinson, Mr. Wilfred Motsi. And his job is he's going to demonstrate how many of the conversations been having from stewardship, from making money, indigenous knowledge system, responding to communities, how much, and that I'm going to leave you to be the judge, and you can ask him when you put your hand up how much of that is in the Dinson's approach to the way they are doing their business down in Manize. Sir, welcome.
Okay. Hello. Thank you very much, Moderator. I was a little bit disappointed when you called other panelists and you left us seated there, because I wanted to say, give a testimony of how we have implemented industrialization. And in my case, it's not only rural industrialization, but also sustainable rural industrialization, whereby we all use all the principles of social responsibility, economic growth, as well as the principles of sustainability as a company. So I've got a PowerPoint presentation where we'll give live testimony of what we are doing at Dinson Iron Steel Company. Briefly, my presentation will be based on the about us, just briefly, and the products which you are producing. And then I'll go deep dive into the approaches to the community-based sustainable industrialization, and also looking at some of the economic growth, environmental sustainability, as well as the success of sustainable industrialization. On that outline presentation, I've written, Dinson Integrated Iron Steel aims to balance economic growth with environmental protection and social responsibility. I think my previous speaker from Emma have also said that for any company to start up any project, there's the need for bottom line, which is profit. But at the same time, we should not only look at profits, but we also look at the environmental protection as well as social responsibility. So these are some of the things which we are doing at Dinson Iron Steel Company. Right, just about us, just briefly, we are number one in the world in so many sectors, that is in steel production, in stainless steel production, in limestone production, in lithium production, and we employ over 185,000 employees, and we are also within the 250 ranking in terms of the global Fortune 500 companies. And then the topic which I'm going to talk about is Dinson Steel. We are proud to say that we are one of the mega projects in Zimbabwe, which is moving towards industrialization, and we are going to be the largest iron steel plant in Zimbabwe and in Africa beyond. And in terms of employment, let me say that 95% of our employment are Zimbabweans. And from that 95%, 90% are from the local community market. So basically, we are empowering the local community. And then we are saying our company is not just a Chinese company, but it's a Zimbabwean Chinese company, whereby we also uphold the multicultural society, where with Zimbabweans on the other side and Chinese on the other side, but living in harmony. Right, in terms of our location and our investment, about 2 billion which we have invested in Zimbabwe in different enterprises, and those are some of the companies which we operate in Zimbabwe. And I think we operate in almost 5 provinces in Zimbabwe. That is in Mat North, where we've got the coke, in Mat South, where we've got the lithium, in Mat West, where we've got the mining, and Mat East, where we've got the mining of iron ore, and Mat West, mining of chrome, and then Midlands, where we've got the steel plants. So that is the journey. Those are pictures just showing how we transformed the environment. I think the first picture at the corner, it shows a virgin land, an agrarian land where nature was living in harmony. But our coming in, we disturbed the environment. And the second picture, where we're engaging the community. We also engaged community before we went on the ground. That map showing where we're supposed to be located, but with other stakeholders. So there is sense of participation and inclusivity. And then this third picture on top there is showing the environment which we have destroyed. That is about 24 months ago. But today, that is the new built environment on that picture showing our steel plant. So that is industrialization in the thick of the forest. That is a rural setup. Right. I want to also get the chance also to market my product, which we are producing at Dingson, before I get into the core business. We are producing pig iron as a company. We've got a stand here in Hall 2A, so anyone can go there and see this product which we are talking about live. We have pig iron, which is used for steel making. We have what is called continuous casting billets, which is also used for the making of the actual steel. And the grades are given and specifications are given, so those who are keen to go and buy, those are the specifications and the grades. And then we are also producing rebars, hot rolled wires, and they're also displayed on our stand. So please, ladies and gentlemen, the products are there now. Those are in construction. You go there, the products are also in place. So those are some of the products. Right. When we talk about sustainability, how sustainable industrialization is achieved, we've got so many factors which we have to put into consideration. One of the factors is the local content. We are producing in Zimbabwe, and the steel we are producing is within Zimbabwe, and it's a local content. We are also looking in terms of infrastructure development, which we have already developed and which are also developing. We have also skills development. I think a lot of people have talked about skills development, skills. I think they've got a gentleman there from the Ministry of Skills. At Dingson, we are developing skills. And we want also to invite you to come and see how skills have been developed at Dingson. We are also talking about technological transfer. In my presentation, we are also going to see how we have mitigated against the environment using the latest technology. And then we are also talking about the supply chain localization. 95% or 98% of our product is coming from Zimbabwe, and it's localized. So what it means is other people within the sector are actually linked with Dingson. And we are also talking about economic diversification. Yes, there are so many activities taking place. It's not only steel, but there are other also industries which are also going to benefit from what we are doing. And when we talk about community-based models, which we are using, this is particular case for Dingson. There are so many other models. With the assistance and collaboration with Ministry of Industry and Commerce, we are working on what is called Local Enterprise Development Initiative, whereby the locals are involved in the production chain. For us, ladies and gentlemen, to be more efficient, to increase efficient, we should also use the community-based approach, which is that involved the local enterprises. We've also come up with what is called livelihood engagement programs, where the local people who have been immediately affected by our project are also part and parcel of the development. We are also working with the traditional chiefs. I think I'm glad the Chief Mushana is here. We are working with traditional chiefs to come up with what is called community trust, whereby the community should also enjoy from the resources which they've been keeping for years and years. And joint ventures with other industries. I think we're also working with one of the biggest companies in Zimbabwe, which closed because of other reasons, which is Cisco, whereby we are also saying, come and we join hands and we also work together. And we are also working with partners, schools, universities, colleges and technical colleges. Already we have signed a handful of MOUs so that at least we transfer skill to these upcoming children. Right, I think Mr. Stead Kangati have also said about this, that is economic growth, environmental protection, and social progress. This is what we are aiming as a company. And that also is a model, Dingson, which shows how these approaches can be achieved, whereby we talk about environmental protection, economic sustainability, social sustainability, participation and inclusivity. And I will talk a lot about this participation and inclusivity. And the professor also talked about environmental stewardship, and we also appeal to that. Mr. Kangati also talked about environmental impact assessment and continuous monitoring and evaluation. Thank you, moderator. I think I came here at the right time, whereby other people will speak, and then I just sum up, and my presentation is going to sum up everything. Okay, so in terms of participation, inclusivity, we engage communities, ladies and gentlemen. Those pictures have been taken at Dingson in a rural setup where we have engaged the community in decision making. The first picture is showing the real communities which have been affected by our project. And the other side, downwards, the other picture is showing us with talking with government officials. We are very lucky that through the government, they formed what is called interministerial committee, whereby all ministries were involved in our setting up of the project. And that's why it only took us almost 2 years to finish the project. And that picture with that lady and those two colleagues of mine, we believe in cultural inclusion in whatever we do. We had a ceremony before we start anything at Dingson, whereby we had to brew traditional beer in 21 days. I mean, just appeasing the spirit so that at least when we start production, there is no disturbances. And as you can see, women there seated and asking them their needs in terms of what they want in terms of development or in terms of collaboration. We don't impose. We talk to the people and they give us the answers and we do what they want. Because we don't want them to say, this is a project by Dingson. No. We want to say, this is our project. And those are some of the contribution. I think a lot have been said in terms of community engagement, in terms of skills development, and we are also doing this one, all these things as a company. But I'll go further on the last item where it talks about economic empowerment, where we talk about local procurement as well as local